for joining us. This is North Coast Perspectives. I'm James Faulk. In the past week, the nation passed an awful milestone of 200,000 dead from the coronavirus. As of this afternoon, we'd reached 203,000, with some experts predicting that we may reach as high as 400,000 before a vaccine becomes deliverable. Humboldt County hasn't been spared the sorrow. This week, we had our 7th COVID death. Overall, though, Humboldt County remains an aberration. Our numbers have stayed consistently low, better than a vast majority of the state of California, and our residents seem for the most part content to follow the guidelines set forth by health officials. The last part remains key, of course. No matter how well we do from week to week, one super spreader event is all it would take to overwhelm our local healthcare system and bring all our positive momentum to a screeching halt. Of course, we haven't been spared the economic devastation either. Businesses, if they're operating at all, are often working at only half capacity, and as a result keep on half the staff they'd previously employed. This week, we asked the question, what does the economic future hold for Humboldt County? So many of our heritage industries are stagnating, and the tourism dollars that have helped sustain us these past several years are becoming more and more scarce. So tonight we sift through the rubble of what used to be to find a seedling that has recently taken root among the refuse and contamination on Samoa Peninsula. For once, it's a serving of positive news to cleanse your heart and palate and perhaps someday help to fill your bank account. Now, the interview. KEET TV sat down with Marianne Naess of Nordic Aquafarms this week to explore this very topic. Her company has proposed an ambitious $500 million facility for Samoa Peninsula, one that could eventually employ as many as 150 people. It will also lead to the remediation of long-abused industrial property and the reuse of abandoned infrastructure. It's a project they believe is a great fit for the people of Humboldt County.
Well, it's a land-based fish farm. And it's basically what you do is you take everything that's been produced previously in the ocean in net pens and move it up on land, onshore. So it's in large tanks onshore that's inside a building.
Okay. Now, go ahead, please.
It's what you call a RAS facility, RAS. It's a recirculating aquaculture system. So we recirculate 99% of the water all the time, continuously.
I mean, the big question is why Humboldt Bay? I mean, you mentioned that it's going to be not in the water, and it's going to be in tanks, so that makes me think that you could do it anywhere. Why have you guys chosen Humboldt Bay as the site?
Well, I think that's actually a misconception. We looked from Santa Cruz to the Canadian border on the west coast and found Humboldt as the site that fit most of the criteria that we're looking for. You need access to fresh water. You need access to clean, cold water. It needs to be a constructible site. You need to have a discharge pipe in place, or at least otherwise you would have to permit it, which is quite difficult today. It needs to be a nice community where you have access to people with the right attitude and competence that can work for us, and having HSU and the College of the Redwoods too. It's a huge benefit. And Humboldt is a place where you can actually, I think, find the labor force that we need.
Yeah, I mean, Humboldt State does a lot of like wildlife kind of degrees and marine biology and stuff. Does that stuff that fits with what you guys are searching for?
Marine biology and aquaculture, yes. And we're also developing together with community college, a aquaculture degree, a certificate. So we have a wide range of jobs, so we'll have a wide range of jobs. But yes, it's the seafood heritage and fisheries heritage that you have in Humboldt is also a plus for us.
Yeah. You mentioned jobs, how many do you think would ultimately be created for local folks?
When the farm is in operation, approximately 150. But then, during construction, which will last for at least, 4, 5, 6 years, we'll have an additional 200 to 300 high-skilled construction workers. And then you have all the ancillary businesses, in logistics, in byproduct, and other services that you need. So usually you see a ripple effect that will be maybe 2-3 times what we create.
Yeah, awesome. Any idea of what the annual revenue might be ultimately for the the business, and how do you think that might impact the local economy?
Well, that's a little early to say. I mean, we're a few years from that, but the investment will be approximately $500 million, 500 million in investments. Of course, the valuation of that will affect the local economy, and also, eventually, of course, the revenue.
Wages and whatnot as well, I'm sure, and ultimately.
Yes, and we're a serious employer. We want to be a stable and serious employer. So we will have competitive wages and benefits, and we like to attract people that we can retain. So being a good and serious employer is important for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Humboldt County residents, it's been sort of a checkered past with people coming into the area and trying to do industrial projects or projects that are big. Investments and construction and all that. I mentioned in the notes I sent you, TerraGen. I mean, they were obviously in the process of sort of late in the process, and then they got scuttled. Does that history concern you guys, and how have you been received with your proposal?
I think we've been very well received in Humboldt. We have I've met with a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders. We have a really good community liaison in Lynette Mullen that has been working with us and introducing us to the important stakeholders. We have had several meetings with stakeholder groups, the environmental community, surf riders, fishermen, tribes, and other politicians, business leaders, etc. So, and I think we've been well received. And I think, from what we hear from the community and from the decision makers, they are rooting for this project and want it to happen. So I feel confident that we can work, our way through the project and through permitting and make sure that this happens.
Yeah, it does seem to be ideally suited in a lot of ways with the personality and the culture of Humboldt County. So I can see why there might be a little bit more acceptance to this than some of the other projects that have been proposed in the past. One of the things that keeps people out of Humboldt County is infrastructure limitations. I mean, the port, for all its benefits, it also has some severe limitations, including the bar coming into Humboldt Bay. There's highway limitations in terms of what trucking you can get in. The rail's dead. Did any of those issues impact your decision to move in? I mean, obviously you're deciding to go ahead, but are those things that you would like to see addressed? And do you think that would encourage more growth ultimately?
Well, I think, we have been looking at the infrastructure in Humboldt, and there are some, upgrades necessary in terms of, the water, fresh water, in deferred maintenance, etc. And I know the water district is, addressing that. When it comes to, people ask, saying, Humboldt is remote. And I mean, for our purposes, it's actually quite a central location. We can reach approximately 50 million consumers within, 12 hours trucking distance. So, and we're not shipping out anything on barges or ships. We're, using trucks. And I have been asked, what happened if there is a emergency and the roads are closed? And of course, that would be very unfortunate. We wouldn't be able to deliver fish to our market, but we could always stop, harvesting for, a day or two or a week if that's, as an emergency, in an emergency situation. So I think we've, looked at it, and I think what you have in terms of transportation infrastructure is sufficient for what we need.
Excellent, excellent. People are always concerned around here about the environmental impacts, and that's part of the reason why some of those previously proposed projects didn't make it. There are various issues surrounding the site that you guys are proposing to go on. Most of they're pre-existing, I mean, in terms of contamination and whatnot. But can you describe for us briefly what you think the environmental impacts might be and how they'll be mitigated, or if you think that there'll be very little? What's your position on that?
Well, I mean, we have to demolish and clean up the site. We have done some preliminary investigations that came out better than anticipated. But actually cleaning it up and making sure that it's proper for food production is our responsibility. Taking down the boiler building and the smokestack and all the rumble that's out there too. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of impacting, if you look at the production and what we do, this is an escape-proof facility. It's on land. The fish are in tanks. They can't escape through any kind of pumps. We have filters that are 0.04 microns. They're pretty small.
Yeah.
and it's built to withstand any seismic event or tsunami. We also treat our discharge. We're discharging into the existing discharge pipe, and it's treated. So we're removing 99% of most nutrients from the water, and close to 90% of the nitrogen as well, which is so that's in a sense where you can mitigate some of the potential impact. And we're treating our intake water as well when we have high or very strict biosecurity measures to ensure that we won't get any disease or try to prevent any kind of disease in the facility.
Yeah.
So we want to see that we don't have to treat fish for diseases like you would have to do in a traditional aquaculture pen.
When do you guys think that you might begin construction? What are the remaining hurdles that you guys are facing in terms of getting going?
We have submitted our discharge permit applications to the Water Board and the Coastal Commission, and we're submitting the CEQA ISMND, which is the initial study, mitigated negative declaration for the potential impact, and the CEQA and the coastal development permit to the county. That will be submitted later this fall. So if everything goes as planned, we hope to have our permits next year and then start demolition and preparations maybe next fall. And just cleaning up the site and demolishing it will be 6 to 8 months at least. And then, of course, you need to build the foundations and make sure that, you need to do some soil augmentation and foundation building before you start construction. So it's a long process.
Absolutely. Are there any outstanding issues that could threaten the project at this point? I mean, are there any major flags that you are watching on the horizon, or are you pretty much confident that you have, a clean runway?
Well, I mean, we still need to obtain the permits, of course. I think we have a good project. I think it's feasible to obtain permits, and of course, we have cleared the path for a lot of the questions that we had, and now we need to go through the regulatory process in California. And so far, it's been a good process, and I think government authorities and public authorities have been really receptive, and we have a good dialogue, and they're working with us to work through all the issues that might come up. And I am very happy with the collaboration that we had so far. So I'm optimistic, yes.
North Coast Congressman Jared Huffman this week took to Facebook to hammer home just how vital an accurate census is to the people of his 2nd district. Data collected by the census is used to determine how much funding every community in the U.S. receives for critical services like education, medical care, foster care, roads, public transit, and job programs. Census data also helps local governments enhance public safety and prepare for emergencies. Even a small undercount could jeopardize millions in federal funding.
We are in the home stretch of the 2020 census. This is something we only do every 10 years. It is a big deal. In fact, I cannot emphasize enough how critical it is that in the days ahead, we do everything we can to get an accurate, complete count of all the residents in my congressional district. Now, this accurate count is necessary because this is how federal funds are distributed. It determines the allocation for local federal programs, but it does even more than that. It impacts redistricting for both federal districts and state government districts. And if you want more money invested in schools, if you want an urgent care or emergency room facility when you get sick someplace, or social services like unemployment, if you want all of that to be available to folks in our community, then completing this 2020 census is vital. The House Oversight and Reform Committee recently completed a report for us that actually breaks down specific numbers on the impact of an undercount in individual congressional districts. So let's go to my congressional district. This report shows that for every 1% undercount in the 2020 census, the residents of my district, your neighbors, will receive $183,000 less in federal funding for Title I schools. That is the equivalent of all the textbooks that 730 students would need in a school year. And that's for just a 1% undercount. That undercount would lead to $165,000 less in federal funding for job training centers and career counseling. So these are significant numbers. And again, that's just a 1% undercount. You think about where we are right now, we are teetering at only about a 66% completion rate on the census. So the costs of not getting to 100% are really astronomical. Our community needs to have the resources to meet all of these different needs in the next decade. You know that. And that means every person in this district must be counted. So please, if you haven't done so already, I'm urging you to fill out your census form. Just go online at 2020census.gov, 2020census.gov, or you can call this phone number, 844-330-2020. And you could also fill out the form that you probably have received in the mail.
In other news, Huffman today celebrated the passage of the Clean Economy, Jobs, and Innovation Act, which included an amendment dealing specifically with local tribes and the Klamath River. The amendment is designed to safeguard tribal communities against further harm to the Klamath River from PacifiCorp's 4 aging dams. If PacifiCorp turns its back on the negotiated agreement to remove the dams, the Huffman Amendment would impose new relicensing conditions for the dam owner, including a requirement that the dams comply with state and tribal recommendations to reduce harm to fisheries. Huffman said that by approving the amendment today, the House has sent a very clear message to PacifiCorp that Congress will no longer accept business as usual when it comes to the Klamath River dams. The long list of abandoned HSU community programs threatens to expand once again this week after the administration terminated its operating agreement with University Center. The University Center is a nonprofit auxiliary organization composed of HSU students, staff, faculty, alumni, and community members. The group is responsible for operating such popular HSU programs as Center Arts, Center Activities, and the Humboldt Bay Aquatic Center. The cancellation notice from HSU outlines a series of alleged breaches that the administration demands be addressed. HSU President Tom Jackson Jr. said he remains committed to resolving the issues which were not specified in the press release. A call to University Center board member Casey Park was not returned by deadline. In recent months, the community has lost the HSU football program as well as the community-run version of public radio station KHSU. Humboldt County Deputy Health Officer Josh Ennis this week said that while the local healthcare sector's capacity alert system went from green to yellow this week, that doesn't mean people in Humboldt County have let up on following health restrictions. Indeed, he pointed out that while the more hospitalizations have occurred, the number of active cases is back in the teens, a positive sign of community health.
So in terms of tying the hospitalizations to people's behavior around the non-pharmaceutical interventions, it's hard to tie the two necessarily. I think it is very easy for people to get lulled in complacency because they've been doing these things, they've been relatively untouched. We've been very fortunate in our county that numbers have remained low. So it's very easy to stop doing those things, to become very relaxed about it. For the current hospitalizations, I'll just note that the height of our numbers was 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, and this is what we expect. We expect that when we have lots of cases floating around, it's more difficult to diagnose most of those cases, and then it starts spilling into people who maybe are trying to be more careful, or maybe they're not being careful and it rapidly spreads, and so it's a lot harder to chase that line of transmission to extinction and put out that line of transmission. So I think these hospitalizations are more tied to just more disease circulation generally that we saw 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. And I'd be real hard pressed to say that it hinges upon a loosening of things such as social distancing and facial coverings. That being said, I think it's a good reminder that we shouldn't become complacent, because at any one time there can be a super spreader event. And if we're continuing to do things and introduce more risk, such as gathering, those things become much more important for limiting the spread of disease.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Taking the stage. It's time for these two candidates to meet.
If you can't beat him in a debate, you got a big problem.
Who has what it takes to lead us through these tough times?
We're in the battle for the soul of the nation.
How will the candidates handle their first one-on-one? A PBS NewsHour Vote 2020 election special. The first presidential debate.
Eureka Mayor Susan Seaman, once a KEET employee, focused this week on an age-old PBS theme. Please, won't you be my neighbor? In her weekly message to her constituents, Seaman said the city is offering grants to help city residents improve the neighborhoods and foster a greater sense of community.
This week marks the 6-month anniversary that I've been doing these addresses, and I want to note that it appears we're doing a pretty good job of flattening the curve and keeping our new COVID-19 cases under control right now. I notice myself and hear people from the community say that everybody is really committing to wearing their masks. If we all keep it up, we can make a huge impact on keeping us all healthy. In Humboldt County, we remain at moderate risk, which allows most of our businesses to remain open. It's your attentiveness to monitoring your activities that are responsible for that. So for those of you who are following good COVID-19 practices and are helping to create a healthier community and sustain our economy, thank you, and keep it up. Those caring actions are the activities of a good neighbor. And as it happens, September 27th through October 3rd is Eureka Good Neighbor Week. This is the second year we've celebrated the importance of our relationships with our neighbors for emotional connection, or the ability to advocate for a geographic area, or to work together to be resilient in the face of a disaster. This year, despite the lack of events to bring neighbors together, the City of Eureka has something extra special to offer. The Neighborhood Investment Mini-Grant Program was approved at the last City Council meeting in an effort to encourage and support neighborhood initiatives. The $500 grants can be used to foster neighborhood pride and a sense of belonging, develop stronger relationships among neighbors and neighborhood groups, improve the quality of life for residents, increase equity, resilience, opportunity, and leadership, and build capacity for long-term change by neighbors working together. The funds can be used for a variety of projects, including communications like a neighborhood website, newsletters, or bulletin boards. It could be used for a new resident welcome packet or meeting information signage. Funds can also be used for physical improvements like sidewalk planters or little free boxes, community gardens, or public art. And when we can safely return to it, funds can be used for special events like neighborhood block parties, cleanup events, beautification events, and kids' play days. The list of possibilities is long, and the city is excited to hear about your ideas. Visit the City of Eureka website at ci.eureka.ca.gov to get more details. The program is now open and will remain open until the funds are used.
Tonight's featured poem from the Behind the Mask collection of COVID poems comes from Greg B. of Arcata. Enjoy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Greg B. I'm here in Arcata, California, and I have a poem for you. The name of the poem is a poem written on the morning of April 7th after COVID-19. I drive to the North Jetty at 2:04 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I can't sleep. I have a perfectly good shelter, but the in place part is something I've never been able to figure out. I come to this same spot on the jetty when I feel unsure of what to do next. No matter what is going on with me or the world, this place stays the same. The ocean is always there. When the day comes that I drive to this spot and the ocean is gone, that's when I'll know we can just say screw it and be done with the whole thing. Right now, the tide is rough. Humboldt fog rolls in and covers every star in the sky. This is literally what I'm seeing, not a metaphor for hard times or uncertainty in the future, although it would be a good one. Maybe this place knows how to make its own metaphors. Maybe right now, all we need to do is listen to the waves as they crash, cook Sunday dinner, and tell the people in our lives that we love them. Shelter in a way that doesn't say, I'm afraid, in a place where you'd rather say, I'm trying the best I can, instead of, I'm sorry, I didn't know what I was doing. At 2:31 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, I wonder if I can sit here until the sun comes up over the ocean. I wonder if I could sit here with you on a blanket until 6:49 a.m., like that time we did in Asbury Park. We counted 7 shooting stars that we both saw. I knew that if I just held you there a little longer, it would make everything better, but you said we should get going. I know no matter how hard I try, you will not sit here with me. No matter how hard I try, the sun will not rise over the Pacific Ocean, but I still wonder. 2:42 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, I think about how tragic it would be if I didn't take off my shoes and socks and dip my feet into the water. How tragic it would be if I didn't feel the wet sand between my toes the night I came to the North Jetty to die. So I take them off, one by one, and run off to dip them in. And as I get closer to the water, it feels like the ocean is receding. With every step, the water is somehow further away. I run faster, and I am so scared that there is a tsunami waiting to crash down around me. I'm scared that God is hiding there, neither omnipotent nor benevolent, just hiding there the way cowards do. My feet feel a beautiful splash of water, and I rejoice. I let the moment pass without even acknowledging it. I turn around and start sprinting back to my car. I don't know if I'm running away from a tsunami or God or Humboldt County, the love of my life, or a lifetime of regrets. Maybe I just love to run. Maybe it feels good to move my body this way after spending the day in bed and after however many weeks we've been living this way. Maybe viruses aren't the only things that want to spread. Maybe it's okay to love the run. And at 3:08 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, I can confidently say that it doesn't have to be towards or away from anything. It can just be on the beach for fun, to make you feel something other than boring, to let you know the things you want are always there, even when it's raining or cold, or you just don't feel like going. Thank you.
That's all the time we have for now. Tonight, Humboldt County reached its 501st infection from the COVID pandemic. Stay tuned, stay informed.